This is ACC Nation, your source for ACC sports coverage. Connect with us at accnation.net. Listen to our podcast and streaming radio. Watch us on YouTube and follow us on your favorite social media outlet. Now, here's Will and Jim.
Welcome to ACC Nation. That's Will Ogen, and I'm Jim Quist. We're talking selection committee for men's and women's basketball. The brackets, we've got them. They just came out a little while ago, and we're going to go through them. Let's start out with the men's side, Will. Some surprises here, maybe on the ACC side. Some people already howling over this one particular pick. So let's get right into it. First four, one of those teams is North Carolina. What do you think?
You know how earlier in the football season I did that one episode where every game I put a song to it? If there was a song I would put to UNC's selection, it would be Controversy by Prince. Like
There's going to be a lot of that.
It's extremely controversial for multiple reasons. Number one, the athletic director, Bubba Cunningham, is head of the selection committee. Yes, he's not allowed in the room when they are discussed. Still a conflict of interest, though. Might say more about how athletic directors and whatnot probably should not be involved in the selection process. Just an idea. I mean, get people who actually are paying attention to the game on more national level. Get your Kim Poms, your Eva Miyakawas, your Bart Torviks. Get those people in who have metrics that are better suited for the NCAA tournament now that we have all this data and whatnot. Personally, yeah, I don't see why UNC got in. I don't think they should have gotten in. I know we're an ACC podcast and we should be praising them, but I'm just trying to be real here. They had no business getting in.
I agree.
They had one quad one win. As I pull up the resume, they had one quad one win, which is one fewer than Wake Forest, Stanford, Virginia, two fewer than Georgia Tech. Or if you want to just break it down on a national level, they had the exact same amount of quad one wins as teams like Columbia, who was ranked 272nd in the net. They had a quad three loss to Stanford. They were 1-12 in quad one. And a lot of the reason it seems like they got in is because a lot of the teams that were on the bubble, they were a lot of those teams around there, they were like the top ranked in terms of some of the metrics, like wins above bubble. And I forget the other ones. I had the stat in front of me, but I no longer have it in front of me. But the fact they left them in or put them in and left out West Virginia, and that's a controversial thing into itself when they said that their star player's absence was the reason that they were left out, even though said player has not played in 3 months and they won at Kansas without said player.
Does this sound a lot like FSU a redo?
Kinda. It does. It does. In a lot of ways.
Basically, a lot of BS. The thing that I guess that blows me away again, you're right. I'm looking at the stats and I look at this team and I go, they did not play up to snuff. They should not have been given a bid to be in the NCAA tournament. I just don't think they're a good team. I think they had talent. For sure. I mean, there's no doubt there's talent on that team. I don't know what didn't work. I'll tell you what didn't work is their coach, because we've had that discussion before too. Now, The howling is going to get really loud when they go up against number 11 San Diego State. You've talked about San Diego State before. I think our buddy Jason Carmela has talked about San Diego State. If they lose to San Diego State in this buy-in basically game, um, it you can't help but think that the fan is going to be turned on high and somebody is going to be throwing an awful lot of stuff that ought to be left out in a pasture at that fan. And where it lands is deserving because, I just think this is a poor pick. And if it was based on, okay, well, North Carolina drives numbers, well, you could have said the same thing about Florida State with football. I don't know, crazy stuff. And you're right. Hey, we're an ACC podcast and website, et cetera, et cetera. And do we are we to some degree homers for the ACC? Well, sure we are, but we're also realistic. I'm not going to sit here and go, well, hey, they deserve to be in because ACC. They didn't earn it.
Right. We'll be cheerleaders for the ACC a little later, but this is the second year in a row where people thought an ACC team had no business getting into the tournament got in. Remember Virginia last year.
Yeah.
And if North Carolina lays a giant egg like Virginia did last year, oh boy, that's not going to look good on the league.
It does damage overall to the conference. Just simple. Okay. Enough of that, because I know that Tar Heel fans are probably yelling and screaming, jumping up and down right now, and throwing all kinds of obscenities our way.
There'll be a lot of expletives in the YouTube comments.
You know what? Get a dose of reality here for once. Let's just be real about stuff. When North Carolina is doing well, we're right there with you.
Yeah.
But we don't see it this year. And you got to admit, as a fan of UNC, anybody who has been, cheering on this team has been frustrated beyond belief with their lack of performance. And, well, hey, it is what it is. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the other teams that are having to fight their way in. San Diego State and North Carolina. Number 11 seeds. The other number 11 seeds are Texas and Xavier. Number 16 seed, Alabama State and St. Francis. And number 16, American and Mount St. Mary's. So there's some quality teams in there. How far they go is anybody's guess. Is there anybody out of that bunch that you see as potentially going, obviously one of these teams is going to win their game against their opponent, but the next game is the killer. Everybody's just getting lined up to be slaughtered, basically. So who do you see getting past that second game?
I can pull up myself. Yeah. Whoever wins between San Diego State and North Carolina is going to take on Ole Miss, a team, we know SEC. They're a really good team this year. I don't think either one of those teams can get past them. Texas Xavier out of the Midwest. Texas could be Illinois, and that depends on which Illinois team you get on that day.
Right.
And that's been the Illini's MO especially this year. On the days that they're good, they can beat anybody in the country. And then when they are on and when they're not on, they will lose by 40, like the Duke game, for example.
Yep. Let me just ask you, because Mount St. Mary's is just sort of lurking in the back of my mind. Any thoughts there?
Of course, you caught me as I'm taking a drink.
Well, of course,
Well,
Well, cheers.
Skull, happy 316 day to all those who celebrate. Hope you left out some beer for Stone Cold.
There you go.
But but as far as Mount St. Mary's, they're taking on American in the playing game in the East region, and um, yeah, whoever wins that's going to be, win the right to lose by 40 to Duke.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
the reality of the situation.
Yeah. Okay.
They're the lamb being led to the slaughter.
Slaughter. Yes. Proverbial. Our number one seeds are Auburn, Duke. Let's see who else we've got up there. Florida and Houston. I don't think there's any surprise here whatsoever about these number one seeds.
Yeah,
Um,
you're right.
Quality teams. And they
Yeah,
have
and
pretty much
sorry, go
been
ahead.
so all year.
Yeah, these have been, I think these were the four as far as, for a while now. We knew I think there was some kind of question about whether or not Duke would end up with the number one overall seed because Auburn has kind of tailed off of late. But you also can't ignore the fact that Auburn has 16 quad one wins. Two more than Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Duke, meanwhile, only had 9 quad one wins, but that was, obviously partly because of the ACC. Their wins above bubble was sixth, according to the that metric. Um, there's I think they got the number one seeds right. I think with the way that things played out, yeah, they got it right on the head. I think these are the four number one seeds, and I don't think there's room for this for debate.
All right, let's go down the Auburn side of things because this is the this is the one that I think is also going to stir the pot just a little bit because we were, first of all, we had this discussion with Jeremy Wallman of Cardinal Sports Zone. Um, I got the impression maybe you were sort of thrown off by this as well. Louisville comes in with an 8 seed.
Makes absolutely no sense to me. This is the same Louisville team that made it to the championship game of the ACC tournament. Did not lose in quad three or four. All their wins are obviously in the first two, or all their wins. I mean, they were 4-6 in quad one, but 11-1 in quad two. So if
Mm-hmm.
you break that down, 15-7 in the first two quadrants, and obviously 12-0 in quads three and four. Their wins above bubble, which is a metric they've been using in this, 17th. Um, that what that yeah, that makes absolutely no sense to me. And I had put out on social media before that I thought they would be a 5 seed with Clemson. I the fact that they 3 seeds further down, yeah, that one makes no sense to me. I'm absolutely just shocked. And how a team who I think is top 20 in the country right now could be an 8 seed and if they were to beat Creighton would have to face the number one overall seed. And even looking at Ken Palm rankings and Louisville is ranked, I am going to pull it up right here. Louisville is 23rd in Ken Palm. Okay, that's pretty solid. I mean, they're third in the ACC behind Clemson, who is at 18. But still, a team top 25 in the net, you with that 17th ranked wins above bubble, you have as an 8 seed. Yeah, Louisville fans are very, very much upset, and I am in lockstep with them.
Well, they do have a heck of a game, I think, here with Louisville and Creighton lined up against one another.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that kills me about this is that they line these two teams up basically to go head to head with Auburn, and I mean that's a train wreck. I mean that's almost like it feels like somebody got sabotaged there, So um, we'll see how that Louisville Creighton game goes. I mean I'm not even sure how to really um, look at that game and come up with a solid answer as to how I feel like it should go. I know how I'd like for it to go, but uh, just one of those games that there's an awful lot of equal here that I'm looking at that it'll be a battle. It'll be a battle. Now, what I would love to see is Louisville beat Creighton and then upset Auburn. That would be just sweet beyond belief.
How delicious would that be, especially if Duke, and we'll get to the Blue Devils in a little bit, but especially if Duke can run roughshod over its region.
Yes, definitely fun. Um, let me go down through this side here. There's a lot of teams, but we're going to be going over both men's and women's brackets here. So just bear with us here because we have a limited time slot in order to do all of this. The Florida is the number 1 seed going up against number 16 Norfolk State. Again, we talk about Lamb's slaughter. Norfolk State will be a pain in their rear. I'll guarantee you that. But they don't have the firepower to hang in there for an entire game. So, but what I find interesting next is that number 8 UConn and number 9 Oklahoma game. I think that is again going back to that Louisville Creighton game is equally a barn burner. And whoever comes out of that has a really good shot at knocking off Florida.
Yeah, I mean, so I think UConn has a better shot at doing it in Oklahoma, though, honestly. UConn, obviously two-time defending national champ, has obviously struggled a bit this year, kind of back to the pack after, losing so much talent to the NBA. And yeah, I think if Florida struggles a little bit, UConn can definitely be there. I mean, we know UConn is a pretty good team, but they're just not to Florida's level,
Right.
on a given day. Obviously, we know anything can happen.
Exactly. All right. As we slide on down that list, we don't have any further ACC teams because this is very, very slim pickings for the ACC this season. So we'll slide over to Duke, and Duke at number 1 in their side of things, a number 1 seed. I don't see any issues here, as we talked about earlier. Essentially, what is it? San Diego State and North Carolina. I don't see this being an issue here, unless you have 2 players who are out because of injury.
I mean, Duke won the ACC tournament without Cooper Flagg in the championship game and Malik Brown. I don't think they're going to have any issues beating American or Mount St. Mary's. I mean, they could hold them both out. Well, I don't know if Malik Brown's going to play. I know Duke said Cooper Flagg's going to play, but I'm going to wait until that actually and wait and see him actually out on the court for it to actually be true, because people are going to say that. And then I think they actually, if I remember correctly, Shire said today that their goal was to get him out for that game, but it didn't make it official that he was back.
I don't see any issues here. Really don't. We'll slide on down here just a little ways. Mississippi State and Baylor, 8 and 9, then going up against, I'm already counting Duke as a winner. So Mississippi State and Baylor, I don't see either one of those teams having enough in the pocket to do anything with the Blue Devils on that next level.
No, I don't either, Jim. I'm 100% in agreement with you. Yeah, both these teams have been very up and down this season. Baylor was on the bubble not that long ago, so that kind of tells you where they're, and they ended up on the 9 line. So I don't think either one of these teams are going to pose much of a threat to Duke, whether they're healthy or not.
My apologies if I threw people off with my comment in regarding San Diego State and North Carolina just a moment ago in regards to Duke. I'm getting ahead of myself, and as Will corrected American and Mount St. Mary's did. So just to
We're
make that
both we're
clear,
both just so flustered over North Carolina's inclusion.
I'm just like I've been running around in circles here for the last 3 hours. Um, let's get on down here to another team that you had talked about. That's Clemson. Clemson is a number 5 seed, and they're going to run up against McNeese, who's a number 12. Um, uh, I don't see any issues here at all in this game. But
As
you
far
know,
as Clemson, as far as Clemson being a 5 seed, that's what they've been projected for quite some time now, and they didn't do anything to really move up or move down. They just stayed a
right.
5 seed, and that's where they deserve to be. I mean, McNeese State, I think they can really give Clemson a game. Um, and I look at it this way. You know what? If Will Wade can't beat Clemson in this year, maybe wait, 9, 10 months. He could do it in the ACC if NC State hires him.
This is true. Hey, the team that they may be facing, if Clemson wins that game and moves on, which we will make the assumption that they will, Purdue is more than likely at number 4 seed against number 13 seed High Point. Purdue is probably going to be moving on, so it's going to be a Clemson Purdue game. That could be entertaining.
To quote Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. I think High Point can give Purdue a game.
Well, they
I'm not
usually do.
sure I have not done my brackets yet. That's why I haven't really sat down and like looked things through, but just off the off the cuff, I think they can give Purdue a real game. But even still, if they beat Purdue, I think Clemson has a real shot because this is a game where Purdue without Zach Edey, they have no ability to stop anybody in the paint. I think that could be a big Ian Shuffling game.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, I haven't done my brackets either, and I don't have I haven't not had time. I mean, honestly, had other things to think about. This that's it from the standpoint of ACC teams. So look up and down this wonderful list that we have, these brackets, and tell me your thoughts on who you think might be a surprise run. I mean, this is top to bottom. I've got a couple of teams that I think let's forget about our number 1 seeds for a second. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I honestly, my gut's telling me that those are the teams that are probably going to end up there. But every year we have a surprise or two.
Mm-hmm. The only 1 seed that I like off the top of my head, I think could not make the second weekend is Houston. Just because they have Gonzaga. They play the winner of Gonzaga, Georgia, and I think Gonzaga can win that game. And if you look at KenPom, these are 2 top 10 teams. Houston is number 3 on KenPom. Gonzaga is number 9 on KenPom. Obviously, Gonzaga didn't quite have the resume this year. They didn't beat up on teams in a non-conference like they usually do, and they got the auto bid out of the WCC. Even though St. Mary's won the regular season by 3 games. But out like teams that I think could be Cinderella types, UC San Diego, um, in the South region and the 12 seed, I think they could beat Michigan. And I'm not ruling out Yale upsetting A&M, Texas A&M.
Yeah.
So UC San Diego is one of the best, is a really, really good defensive team. They've forced turnovers at one of the highest rates in the entire country. Michigan does not handle the ball very well. They turn it over more than you would like. So I think there's a lot of upset potential there to get them into the second weekend. Um, Drake beating Missouri and then potentially beating Texas Tech is a potential one. Drake, obviously the 11 seed out of the Missouri Valley, a 30-win season. Their coach is probably going to take another job here in this offseason. A lot of his players came from Division II with him at Northwest Missouri State or something. I don't fully remember the school, but I want to say something like that. But they beat Miami, or Drake beat Miami earlier in the season. Don't forget that.
Yep. Uh,
Let's see. Anybody else that come to mind immediately? VCU, obviously, they're a really tough team. If they can beat BYU. Maybe they can beat Wisconsin. I know there are certain teams in the ACC that would like to uh, hire Mr. Odom
Match
as their
Mr. Odom.
coach. So potentially we could see that there. But yeah, like say maybe even McNeese or High Point, if they can pull off an upset, they have potential to get to the second weekend as well.
VCU is one of the teams that stood out to me as being a potential run, um, a little deeper than we would have thought. I think that VCU can beat BYU. I actually think, Wisconsin will move on from Montana, but I think that VCU has the capability of beating Wisconsin. At that point, you're probably going to be facing somebody like Alabama ultimately. Now that's
Yeah.
where the challenge comes into play. If VCU
Hmm.
can pull off a win against Alabama,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
And
So
the thing about Alabama is their reliance on the three is it can be good and bad at the same time. We know at their best they can beat literally anybody in the country. We've seen them put up 110 points on teams this season. But we've also seen them at times, struggle. But their defense, they're usually a pretty good defensive team as well, but their defense has not been as good this year as it has been in recent years. So if they struggle defensively and they get in a shootout with somebody, they could lose. Absolutely.
yeah, uh, there's a lot of weaknesses here. When I go up and down this list, the strengths stand out, but there's also an enormous amount of weakness in teams, whether it's offense or defense. There's things that stand out and bother me, which really is disturbing for me when it comes down to ultimately picking who I think is going to, when I do my bracket, when I start sitting there and really examining numbers, and I get way too deep in the damned weeds for my own good on this stuff. Sometimes I should just go by my gut and just leave it at that. But there's some of these teams I'm looking at and I'm thinking, you guys, it's like you mentioned Yale and Texas A&M. There's a classic example right there. Number 4 team in Texas A&M and number 13 seed Yale. A lot of people are saying, Texas A&M could very well lose this game to Yale. Now,
Hey, Yale beat an SEC team last year, so it wouldn't be the first time.
yeah,
Beat Auburn at that.
it's the thing that everybody's got to remember that when it comes down to the tournament, there's a good reason why they call it March Madness. It's because it's everything gets thrown out the window. The baby in the bathwater, baby. And then whatever day it is, whatever hour it is, stuff is going to hit the fan and it's going to be fun to watch. Well,
I was just gonna say
Yeah.
before we move on, 3
Mhm.
words
Yeah.
as the tournament starts. Embrace the chaos.
Yes. Lots of it too, baby. Oh man. You really do have to love this. I mean, basketball is just such a treat. An immense treat. Nobody in the first 4 that from the ACC. We've got a pretty strong lineup here from the ACC. So let's get into the women's basketball side of things. The number 1 seeds are UCLA is the number one seed, taking that out from underneath of number one seed South Carolina, who's the number one seed. Oh man,
Yeah, I know. I was watching the selection show, and there was a little bit of questioning of that. But see, unlike on the men's side, the selection committee chair on the women's side, she actually did a really good job of explaining the situation as to why. And it was talking about, yeah, there was some, and obviously South Carolina had like a 29-point loss to UConn too. So there there was reason, I thought, and logic to her answers.
oh my God, we can't have that in college sports. That's chaos, as you point out. All right. Our number one seeds, USC and Texas. So let's go down the side of UCLA and take a look at who's in from the ACC. Richmond and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is the number 9 seed, and Richmond is the number 8 seed. That is a pretty solid game. I would tend to believe that Georgia Tech has the advantage here because ACC competition for women's basketball has been so much superior to almost every conference this season. I just think they're a better team overall.
Yeah, well, I'll say maybe except for the SEC, but yeah, I do like Georgia Tech in this game. We've seen them uh, be one of the surprises of the ACC this season. Remember, they got out undefeated at one point. I, yeah, they obviously we know there's quite a bit of difference in the competition level of ACC men's basketball and ACC women's basketball. It's the women's side's been a really tough uh, test for them this year, and we're obviously going to be talking about a lot more teams in this bracket on the women's side than we did in the men's side. But yeah, I like Georgia Tech to get the win. I just don't know if I can pick them past UCLA.
Yeah, that'll be a tough head to head. I don't see that one either, but I do believe that Georgia Tech will move on to play UCLA. Now, if they can find something to pull the rabbit out of the hat, good for them.
Yeah, and you also have to factor in, they're playing at UCLA's campus, so it's going to be a home game essentially in the second round for UCLA.
Up next is number 6 Florida State against number 11 seed George Mason. Well, let's not look past George Mason. Florida State has a pretty solid team, but George Mason is also nothing to, look past. So I'm just saying, do not look past this team.
Florida State, we've seen them. They can score with anybody in the country. They run one of the fastest tempos in women's basketball. I'm going to look past this matchup for one simple reason.
Okay.
Please beat LSU. Please.
Oh, well, I'll agree with you on that.
Yeah. I go back to past episodes. You can go back and hear our feelings about Kim Mulkey.
Oh, yeah. It's not that.
Yeah,
It's not
and
the
I kind of got a little nauseous thinking about her name. So
it's not the players.
it's not the players. No, the players are good.
It's a coach. He's obnoxious as hell. And she can't help herself. I think she just absolutely embraces being obnoxious. So yeah, good for you, Kim.
You're being kind with the word obnoxious. The words that come to my mind are not safe for a family friendly podcast.
Be you, Kim. Be you. All right. And then we move on down the line here. In number 2 seed is NC State taking on number 15 Vermont. Vermont's a hustling team, but I think that NC State is just way, 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 way too much to deal with here.
Yeah, NC State had another great season. Yeah, they didn't win the tournament this year, the conference tournament, but I rode NC State to the Final Four last season. I might be prepared to do that again this season, to be quite honest. But I haven't thought again, just like the men's. I haven't filled out my bracket. I really haven't broke down a ton of matchups. This is kind of gut feel, but NC State should have a good path. Obviously, if LSU does win, I think they're gonna have a real tough test in the Sweet 16. But we're gonna hope and pull for the Wolfpack if they can get there.
Let's take the pack will take a bite out of them.
Mhm.
We move on down to we're number one seed Southern California. Why do they put Southern California? It's USC, you know. Anyway, uh,
First world things.
it's they take a number 16 seed UNC Greensboro. Um, Not much chance for you folks in Greensboro to come away with a win here, but make it a game, daggone it. Make it a game. Why? Because our next matchup, number 8 seed California, number 9 Mississippi State. We're hoping that Cal Berkeley moves on and has a little California, uh, you know, tangle going on here. I don't know that they can do anything with Southern Cal, but
I like how you were talking about Southern California and how they put it, but then you went and said Cal Berkeley.
yeah, well,
Yeah, it's funny, if chalk prevails here, you get a former Pac-12 matchup in the second round, except
yeah,
now one's in the
that would be
Big
fun.
Ten and the other is in the ACC. Yeah. Cal had a really good season this year, 25-8 in the ACC or 25-8 overall, won 12 games in the ACC. They did beat Alabama, who at the time was ranked. I mean, you look at some of the resume metrics; they were 8-8 in the first two quadrants. Did not lose in quads 3 or 4, which really helps them. An above 500 record on the road, only one loss at home, which is nice too. So yeah, I think this is going to be a real tight matchup with Cal and Mississippi State. I think I think this game could be ultimately decided by like one possession, but whoever wins, I think is going to be no match for USC. They are such a
Yeah, tough team, very
well.
tough team. So let's move on to Birmingham, and we'll talk about the number 1 seed there, South Carolina, and they're taking on number 16 seed Tennessee Tech. Okay,
Yeah, basically, that's the best way to put it. I mean, Don Staley probably has a little added vengeance of not getting the number 1 overall seed. Will probably take it out on Tennessee Tech, so they might win by 50.
wow. Well, the next matchup, 8 and 9, Utah and Indiana. I think that's a good matchup between those two teams. Now, I really don't see either one of those teams coming out of there and really doing any damage to Staley's group out of Columbia. So,
Mm-mm. Indiana was 19-12 this season. They were 35th in the net, which is why they're there, even though they have a quad 3 loss. And then obviously, the Big 12, Utah is they were 22-8, but they had two quad 3 losses. So that kind of put them way down with that good record. But I might lean. I probably will lean slightly towards Utah in that game, but again, South Carolina is going to romp whoever wins that game.
yeah. Moving on down, ACC team number 3 seed North Carolina takes on number 14 Oregon State.
Before I kind of want to incorporate the other ACC team in the bottom part of this bracket. So would you mind telling everybody who the 2 seed in this region is?
Number 2 seed is Duke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Think about it already.
Uh-huh.
Duke and Carolina, a potential Duke Carolina matchup in the Sweet 16. Boy, they really do have a flair for the dramatics, don't they?
That would actually be. I'm looking at this, and honestly, I think The only team that's in the way here is number 6 seed West Virginia, who could be a real problem for North Carolina moving forward. But if North Carolina gets past West Virginia, um, well, honestly, I don't see anybody else here getting in the way of Duke and North Carolina.
Yeah. We should probably give West Virginia's good. They were actually ranked 12th in the net this season.
They're a good team.
24-7. Yeah. I mean, but I think the thing that holds them back, the reason they're a sixth seed is because yeah, they had 24 wins, 13 of them were in quad four. So they did not be some and they had 18 of their 24 wins in quads 3 and 4. So that really hurts the matchup, the seedings for them a little bit. But yeah, if Carolina plays its game, I think they have a real shot of beating them. And like I said, Duke, that should be a fun game. We saw Duke win the auto bid. Their defense is still this is obviously one of the best teams we've seen from Duke in some time. Getting a 2 seed, winning the ACC auto bid. They're a real threat out of this region to me.
So their game, opening game against Lehigh, who's a number 15 seed, will be entertaining, and it'll give you a little bit of a taste of what's to come. Let's move on down the list where number 1 Texas, number 1 seed Texas is located. And then we'll move on down to the 8 and 9, Illinois and Creighton. Now it's interesting. I'm not totally sold on Texas on anything.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't really know what to think. I honestly would probably, yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting bracket overall, that Birmingham, that region in general. There are obviously some ACC teams in this that we'll get to in a moment, and then another really good story later on. But yeah, I mean, I think they were the number three over, or was it? They were the number three, number 1 seed. I don't know. I think they have a, I think the team in there's going to be a different team in their region that gets out of their region. But yeah, they do have really strong metrics. So number 3 in the net, 14 and 3 in quad 1, 4 and 0, and no losses outside of that first quadrant. So they were 17 and 0 in quad. It's 2 through 4. So they don't really have a lot of bad losses on their resume.
At the same time, I don't see this team as being a clear run at all.
If the team that I think could get them is Tennessee if they play the way they can. I mean, Tennessee does have a quad 4 loss, which really, really hurt them in this process, and they're 6 and 8 in quad 1. But this is a team that plays at the fastest tempo in college and women's college basketball. They are when they're on, it's one of those teams where if they're on, they can literally beat anybody. And Tennessee, I think, could be a real threat in that Sweet 16 matchup.
All right, we move on down further. At number 3 seed is Notre Dame, and as they were talking about on the selection show, they were very surprised that Notre Dame had tumbled as far as they had in seeding at the last moment. There has been some ups and downs this season for Notre Dame for a variety of reasons, and I think that was part of it. But as they point out, if this team plays like they did January, early February, then that's a run team right there. They're going to have a nice run all the way through, and I don't really see anybody. To be honest with you, I don't see anybody in that line slowing them up until they get a little further in, you know.
Yeah, and it's funny me because Notre Dame was number 5 in the net, and they're a 3 seed. Yeah, they have not played well of late. They lost 3 of 5, but look at who you lost to. NC State, a 2 seed, Florida State, a 6 seed, and then Duke, a 2 seed. They beat Louisville, who we'll mention in a moment, and they beat Cal also in that stretch, also in the tournament. So, and they've beat Duke, not long ago. They beat them by 15 at home. Not long ago, this was the number one team in the rankings.
Right.
So they fell off a little bit, and now they are being punished with the 3 seed. And
Yeah.
I guess if there is a team that, and this is goes back to what we were talking a moment ago. If there's a team that I think can beat Texas in this region, I think it could be Notre Dame.
There it is. Down below that is number 7 Louisville, and they'll be taking on number 10 seed Nebraska. That's
Yeah, it feels like
Louisville.
Louisville had a bit of a down season by their
Oh,
standards, doesn't it? I mean,
definitely. This team is not the Louisville that we've seen over the last few years. Jeff Walls has
yeah.
not had a great run with this team this season.
Yeah. Yeah, 2-9 in quad one is part of the reason they are on the 7 line, ranked 36th in the net, but only one loss outside of quad one. They have a good team. But we talked about, this feels like a down year for them, but still at 21-10. Again, I think they can beat Nebraska in round one, but getting past that's going to be tricky. And TCU, we didn't really talk about it, but that's one of the coolest stories in the country. I remember talking last season, we were talking to Megan Gower about it and how they were so desperate for bodies that they were holding tryouts for walk-ons.
Right.
And here they are this year grabbing a Haley Van Lith out of the portal, leading the team. And next thing you know, they won the Big 12. They're a 2 seed in the tournament. That is such an amazing turnaround story. Those
Right.
are kind of the kind of things I love about March.
Yep. That's that is a team obviously to watch there. If anybody's going to give Notre Dame a hard time somewhere down the line, potentially, it would be that team specifically. Um, and let me look here real quickly.
Hey, while you're looking, they did release the teams that are in the NIT this year.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech is in it, along with Stanford and SMU. So we have three ACC teams in the NIT this year.
Okay.
I don't know if they released the WNIT yet. I will look that up.
Um, Interesting. Yeah, look that up. Why?
Yeah. And then yeah, it's funny because a lot of teams turn down bids to this, but then you also have that crown thingy that
Right.
nobody wants to play.
They should still play in it.
Yeah.
I believe experience is experience, and if you're getting money for it, play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Get your kids the experience. Get some more money into your program. How can you go wrong?
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I
Plus, you
am
get the exposure.
right.
That's my
Mm.
theory. I'm
And
sticking to
then
it.
mhm. I am not seeing any ACC teams in the WNIT right off the bat.
Hmm. I know I was asked about Virginia, whether or not Virginia had made anything this year, and I said, well,
I'm
obviously,
double checking again, but I do not see them in the WNIT. It's a lot of teams from like smaller conferences, so I wonder if a lot of them just
said
pulled
no.
out of it. I don't know. That looks like nothing from the ACC into WNIT.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I like I said, I always think that's a mistake. Of course, some coaches leave it up to their players to say, "Hey, do you want to do this or do you not want to do this?"
Yeah.
Um, that's solely up to them. But for me, I just look at it as the experience of continuing to play
Yeah.
and being in that kind of a venue, bringing in money, and that just makes you a better player for next season.
It's kind of two-sided way. There's two ways to look at it, really. Here, if you want, you can keep playing and ride it out with your guys, especially if you have a younger team or, somebody, where you could bring back a lot of pieces. Or you can decline postseason play and just get going on portal and the transfer portal. You think you've got players who are gonna
Right.
enter the transfer portal. You got to start scouting and looking at players to fill those spots. Obviously, there's going to be graduations. You already have to think about your roster for the 25-26 season, and transfer portal is, not too far away. So you really got to start thinking about that too.
Yeah. Yeah. They're, as you point out there, rightfully so. There's a lot of variables involved.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's not just that one-sided approach that I'm throwing out there. So, well, man, looking forward to some excellent basketball over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be hot, and it starts soon. So if you're ready to take off a month and sit in front of the TV and become a couch potato, or however you want to do it,
That'll
March
be me this week.
Is here. So enjoy. Well, among this group, I know that I asked on the last group, is there anybody in this group that you think that should be watched as a potential for sneaking up and biting people?
Oh,
Tennessee.
I will say, just as an aside, 3 bids from the Ivy League in the women's tournament.
Yeah.
Cool as that. I don't know if there's really going to be a lot of big time upsets, at least from like in the same way of the men's ones, where you're going to see upsets on like the 4, 5 line. I think if you're going to start seeing upsets, it's going to be somewhere from maybe that 5-6 down. And they say you can't rule out George Mason beating Florida State depending on the day. We know Florida State, at times can struggle, and if they are having one of their off days, George Mason can absolutely beat them. You're looking at other teams along that line, in the 5-6 lane, don't rule out one of these teams in the playing games, Columbia, Washington, or Iowa State, Princeton to make some noise. And I see 2 Ivy League teams in the playing games, plus Harvard, who was the auto bid. But yeah, I think maybe South Dakota State as a 10 seed against a 7 seed Oklahoma State. South Dakota State won like 30 games this year. Always be dangerous for a team that's won 30 games, just saying.
I'm looking forward to seeing how number 4 seed Kentucky does with former Virginia Tech coach Brooks.
Yeah, Kenny Brooks.
Georgia Amore is still playing there, so
yep.
like to see how they do. I always he's a great guy, and no matter whether he's in the SEC or not, I had familiarity with this guy as a high school coach. So I've watched his progression, and I've always enjoyed some of the players that he's brought in there, Georgia being one of them. He made a really fun program come into existence at Virginia Tech, and I hope they can get back to that point. But he is one of those coaches that is a key to making things happen, and it looks like he's doing that with Kentucky. So good luck to them as well. So that's a look at men's basketball, women's basketball, the NCAA tournaments. The brackets are out, and enjoy the hoop madness. Until next time, cheers.
Skål.
ACC Nation, your source for ACC sports coverage with Will and Jim. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on our podcast, streaming radio, and YouTube. Connect with us on Blue Sky, Reddit, Instagram, Threads, Mastodon, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn.